Hello and welcome to the Paris FinTech Forum Communities Programme. I'm Elliot Gotkin. I'm a journalist and, with Laurent Nisri, co-host of this exclusive video interview series produced with the support of Solaris Bank, Rise and BPI France. Now, Latin America is home to some weird and wonderful creatures. Up until recently, though, there were very few fintech unicorns. Now, after raising more than $3 billion over the past couple of years, there are several. One of the biggest is secured lending platform Creditas. The company's CEO and founder is Sergio Furio, who joins me now. Great to see you again, Sergio.
Great seeing you, Elliot.
How have things been?
Well, it has been like a crazy year, or at least the last 14 months, moving to remote and then just trying to survive down here in this new paradigm.
Right. In terms of Creditas, unlike a lot of lending platforms that we come across, yours is for secured lending. Is that a better or easier business model in general, or just one that specifically works best or very well in Brazil?
Yeah. So, Elliot, to be very honest, like when we started the business 8, 9 years ago, and I was telling potential investors, hey, we are working on this fintech company. Yeah, we want to use collaterals. They were saying, well, that doesn't look like fintech. That looks more like paperwork and very complex and cumbersome processes and so on. And we used to tell them, hey, the secret of scalability in fintech is going to be how can you keep your unit economics, how can you keep your credit quality without deteriorating the customer acquisition cost. And I think that at the end of the day, when you look at the model, it's much more complex to implement. You need to have very strong processes, very strong protocols to manage the whole the whole workflow. But at the same time, because of the fact that you have the collateral, that allows you to be more resilient in moments of crisis and uncertainty. And definitely this last year has been one of them. You were seeing like a lot of liquidity and credit issues, and we managed to remain quite stable with very low volatility. So I guess that on one side, it's like the hard way of doing things. On the other side, it's nice to have the collateral in these moments.
And during the pandemic, which has hit Brazil especially hard, did you see the kind of V shape that so many fintechs have seen in terms of business? Everything kind of coming to a halt when it first started, and then growth going through the roof, or was it a bit more complicated for Creditas in Brazil?
Yeah, bro, you can call it that way. So the what we did back in March when we realized that the pandemic was coming was we shut down the engines from a marketing perspective. We cut it by 80% or so. With that, new loan origination came down by 50, 60%. And then 3 months later, we just turned on the engine again. The beauty of the pandemic is that it reduced competition in general. And so CPL cost came down, customer acquisition cost came down. Consumers were more likely to do things remotely, and therefore the digital players like us benefited from that. So I guess that yes. So 4 months later, we were like at historical records, and today, when you look back in a year, we doubled in size, and probably that has been like an acceleration versus what we could have done in a normal year.
Right. And of course, amid all of this, at the end of last year, you raised, I think, more than $250 million, taking your total raised to just shy of $600 million, giving you a valuation of $1.75 billion. So where to next for Creditas?
Well, just like more of the same and a bit of additional things, I guess. So the pandemic proved that the core business model of Creditas works very well, and that's the reason why we did that fundraise. It was September last year. We were looking at what the amount of cash that we had in the account. It was like enough to live for like probably like another 12 to 18 months. But investors were knocking on the door and asking, hey, how are you guys doing? We were showing them the data, and they said, well, that's wonderful. It looks like this doesn't even look like a credit company. It's you just like didn't see like any impact of these things that are going on in the world. So we did that fundraise, and we redoubled our efforts in a couple of things. One is building like a more robust and automatic platform, and today we have 500 engineers that work like very hard every day to try to improve slightly very small part of the process. And that constant improvement obviously is what we believe that is the secret to create a resilient model. But then on the second hand, we had created a strategic plan focused on going beyond fintech. And it would be like you can call it like a reverse movement of embedded finance. So the typically you would find a marketplace or a let's call it like a car marketplace, like a car reseller going digital and then embedding finance into it so that they can like increase the monetization. You can see like the Mercado Libres of this world, Amazon, and the likes. And we did the other route. So we were like a fintech company that realized that if we wanted to build sustainable competitive advantage, we actually had to penetrate into the user case. And in order to do that, we just announced the launching of a digital car marketplace, similar to Carvana in the US, with our own car reconditioning center right outside of Sao Paulo, 30,000 square meters. And we launched our own home renovation platform with engineers and architects supporting the customer in the process of renovating their houses. And in the earnings vertical, so in the payroll vertical, we launched our own car benefits card and so on. So I guess that when you have a core that works and that generates cash flow and that creates a strong margins, you just want to continue innovating and thinking out of the box so that you can sustain that advantage for 2, 3, 5 years down the road.
Right, I guess we'll have to come up with a name for whatever the reverse of embedded finance is. I don't think unembedded finance works, so we'll keep thinking about that. But I think you were in investment banking and consulting before taking the plunge with Creditas. What gave you the courage or the impetus to leave what I assume was a pretty well-paid job to take on and go head-to-head with Brazil's banks?
Well, first thing is I'm originally Spanish, and I had moved to New York when Lehman collapsed, and 4 years later, I was a bit sick of like doing a technology transformation of an incumbent in the US, and it was taking us 4 years to uh, create a new technological paradigm inside of the bank. And 4 years later, the world had completely changed. That phase was 2008 to 2012. 2008, the iPhone had just been released, and 2012, the world was mobile. And you can imagine there was not a single line of code that was talking about mobile, and it was so frustrating from one sense. So I had never had like any entrepreneurial experience, but a couple of friends were launching businesses in New York, and I had just met my wife at that point. Yeah, that was 2012, and she is Brazilian, and she, in like a random conversation, she come up and says, in Brazil, a personal loan has an APR of 100%. And I said, no, yes. And so I like digged into the Brazilian central bank website, start like understanding what was going on. I said, why don't we just move there? So yeah, it was like doing it without thinking it too much. I think that it's like the classical entrepreneurial game. If you overthink it, you're never going to do it because the odds are very low. You are very comfortable living in Manhattan and getting like a nice bonus, nice paycheck. And yeah, the odds are against you, but happily decided to move to Sao Paulo, learn the language. Even though it's a bit chunky, but part of the game.
Well, as a Spanish speaker, I can understand how one can transition from Spanish to Portuguese. Amazing that this was kind of inspired by a chance conversation with your partner. That perhaps if you hadn't had that conversation, you wouldn't be here right now. But when you actually decided to take the plunge, I mean, did your friends and family think you were crazy? Why are you leaving this well-paid job? Bonuses, nice lifestyle that you've got, moving to Brazil and taking this massive risk in this country which doesn't, let's say, have the world's best reputation for for incubating businesses and startups.
So the first thing is like moving to a different country to launch a business. It's a bit comforting from that sense because you don't see your friends anymore. You just like give the announcement when you're in New York. You tell them, "Hey, I'm gonna do this," and I say, "What the hell are you talking about?" And I say, "Yeah," and that's just like one moment of embarrassment. They say, "Well, you're gonna be unemployed." And remember that I was 2012, right? So it was a different world, and the reputation of an entrepreneur probably was different than today. But you just do it, and I decided not to take outside capital from my friends and my family. I was like too, sort of like ashamed of like potentially losing their money, and I don't want to be like any more ridiculous guy that is like trying to do something, having like a megalomaniac dream and not performing. So I just like took the last bonus from consulting and said, okay, so I have like 12 months to actually do something with this money, and moved to Sao Paulo. And when I came to Sao Paulo, I saw that there was not like a large ecosystem. It was like a tiny one, very few venture capital funds, very few angel groups. So I say, well, I don't know who's going to be funding me. And so I tried actually for almost a year until I found like a group of executives in financial services that say, well, this guy looks like he's going to be passionate about the thing that he's doing, and let's write a check. So I just got like $1 million type of thing, and that was like a year after. What has happened though in Brazil is in just like these last 8 years, the ecosystem has completely changed. It's a vibrant economy, a vibrant ecosystem for entrepreneurs. A lot of angel groups, VCs are now pouring money into the country. International investors want to invest in Latin America as much as possible, and especially Brazil. And as you were mentioning, like in very few years, we moved from not having like any unicorn company in Brazil to now we have, I think it's 15 that we have today, and fintech is one of the big themes in the country.
Okay. Well, I want to come back to Latin America in just a moment. So don't go away, Sergio. We are going to take a very quick break, after which we're going to continue our conversation with Creditas founder and CEO, Sergio Furio. Welcome back, and don't forget, if you are not already a full member of our community, everything you need to join can be found at www.parisfintechforum.com. And now, Sergio, I've got a few more questions for you. So let's talk a bit more in general about fintech and Latin American fintechs. As we discussed, they've already raised more than $3 billion over the last couple of years. One gets the impression that Latin American fintech is finally coming of age.
Definitely yes. So it looks like in as I was mentioning, in less than a decade, what you have had is a bunch of new entrepreneurs, highly educated, coming from investment banks, consulting, and so on, deciding to launch their own businesses, and at the same time, like investors realizing that they were like a huge opportunity in a very inefficient type of countries with wide margins, huge population, and it was like a no-brainer. Obviously, in retrospect, you can see that at that point it was like a much tougher, but today, definitely yes, I would say that Latin America has confirmed to be an amazing place to become an entrepreneur, an amazing return of capital for investors. So it's happily marriage so far, and probably over the next decade, this is just going to continue.
Right, and as we saw in the financial crisis, crises are often great times to start businesses. Given how much Latin America has unfortunately suffered during the pandemic, should we expect an even greater explosion in innovation and fintech from here on in?
Look, I would say that the pandemic has accelerated certain trends on digitalization of the population. Obviously, you are seeing a migration of consumers to digital channels, and the pandemic has just accelerated. Probably you have done like in a year what would have taken you maybe 3, 4, 5 years. So you are seeing like across, yeah, most of the business models a V-shaped recovery from the bottoms of the March, April, May. of last year. So yeah, look like everything is going in good shape. And what happens is when the consumer tries something that is digital, that is more convenient, that they don't need to go to a branch. And there were like very famous lines in banking branches in Latin America, especially in Brazil. Why the hell someone is going to be doing that again? So yeah, I guess that the trend just is confirmed with the pandemic. And the important thing here is to run fast and be bold if you're a fintech player, because the banks are not going to just like stay calm and not do anything and just like look at you and say, "Whoa, what a wonderful guy! He's doing like a very cool thing." No, they're like going to be like competing against you and trying to replicate, trying to do things by themselves. And so yeah, need to continue running.
Okay, well, we've got like less than a minute left, Sergio. So just one final question. You've got some players like yourselves, like Creditas in Latin America. You've got other strong players in, say, Europe, like Revolut, for example. Do you think at some point we might be seeing, international consolidation going on in the fintech space to create, global brands?
I had always been saying that fintech is a very local game, and you have like different regulations. You have different consumers. You need to build a brand in every single country that you go to. For us, for example, it's much easier to increase our penetration in Rio de Janeiro, where we are not that strong as in Sao Paulo, than to go to Chile, which is the size of Chile. With all my respects, but it's less than half of the size of Rio de Janeiro. So why would you build an entire new platform, new integrations, regulator, and all those things? So in general, I'm a fan of like local fintech plays. Obviously, Europe may be like a different story because probably you're going to be having like new regulations coming that are going to be fostering like a consolidation in the region. But I don't see like a lot of value of having like a consolidated play Latin America with Europe today. It's just like doesn't look like a lot of synergies that you want to exploit. Having said that, we did our first attempt of international expansion last year. The first launch in Mexico came up in July, so it has been 9 months so far. Super happy about what we are seeing, but reconfirming how difficult it is to build like a new brand, to meet regulators again, to build an adjusted technology, build a team. It's very hard to be an entrepreneur, and getting into a new country just give that flavor.
Right. Well, I guess no one ever said it was easy, but unfortunately, we were actually out of time. But really want to thank you for taking the time to speak to us and share your insights and your story. So thank you very much, Creditas founder and CEO Sergio Furio, for joining us today.
Thank you very much, Elliot.
Okay, and I'll be back again next week with another big name from the world of finance and technology. We do hope you'll join us again then. In the meantime, you can keep up to date with all the exclusive interviews and content from the Paris FinTech Forum Communities Program via www.parisfintechforum.com. Hope to see you next time. Take care. Bye-bye.